Hello, graphic designers and font designers. Welcome to part one of designing your own usable font. And what I'm looking at right here on the screen are a couple examples from students last year, or my very first year for doing this project, and showing you an example of how you can make a font look like theirs and be able to type with a usable font you create. You can see here that they are indeed installed in my font book, Strawberries Wild and Nightmare 2.1. Once you have finished with this project, you're going to be given this .otf file, which is essentially the file that you're going to be able to use to install to your font book or any other font managing platform if you're on a Windows computer. Now, if you're still struggling with coming up with an idea, I wanted to share this little Instagram post with you to let you know that you can indeed make a font out of anything. And this person over here made a font by creating the letters and characters using sriracha hot sauce. So check them out. They're super cool. Otherwise, we're going to get started on where we should be right now. And that would be creating all of these symbols as well as all letters and numbers. So when you're designing your fonts and your letters, keep in mind what we're looking at over here are these vocabulary words. Make sure that your lowercase letters, if you're designing lowercase, does not go past the X height. All of your letters, try to make them line up on the baseline. Any capital letters, try to not make it go past the cap height. The A center, the tallest that any lowercase letter can go is to the A center height. And likewise, the lowest any part of any letter can go is to the D center height. Now, one thing to note about the letters is I'm only requiring you guys to do either one set of capital or one set of lowercase. And so if we make all uppercase letters, then we're just going to scale those down to be about half the size, and that's going to be our lowercase. This sheet over here, you probably hand wrote some examples of some font design ideas that you've had. Once you're really happy with what you got, you do me a favor, add Sharpie over it. It's going to make it a lot easier in Photoshop to pull the Sharpie ink from that white background. There's a few ways that you can get this onto your computer if you're doing this by hand. One way is to take a picture with your phone or your iPad. You can scan it on a professional scanner. There's also an app called Adobe Capture, which you can download, and it'll link any photos you take on Adobe Capture directly to your Adobe Creative Cloud account. And there's also, I believe Notability has a scanning feature built in, which might also be a useful option. You can then either Gmail it to yourself, upload it to Google Drive and download it. You can airdrop it onto your iMac. Whatever you got to do, just get this file with a very clean image, good lighting onto your computer, because now we're about to throw this into Photoshop.
I just recently had a student come to me and say that they're not happy with their handwriting, or they don't feel super comfortable to create some gorgeous calligraphy art out of for their project. So I do have one other option I want to share with. We can use Adobe Firefly to create all of our characters through AI. I have a student who had this idea to make all of his characters out of shaving cream. And I'm going to show you, if you have a preference to go this route, how we can use Adobe Firefly to create letters out of anything that you write for. Let's exit out of this and go into Google, Adobe Firefly. Let's just type that in. And the very first one, and we're going to click text to image. At the very bottom is where we can input our prompts. So let's say make a letter A out of shaving cream. That's going to be the prompt that we're going to type in. And then we just click generate. Oh, okay. I need to sign in. Let's sign in with our CCHS Gmail account, because that is the one that is linked to our Adobe Creative Cloud account. All right, now that we're here, we have our first options. We need to make sure that we have fast mode checked on. Without fast mode, this next step isn't going to work. We hover over a letter and then we can click upscale. We're going to upscale this one, which is going to make this a better resolution. And with the higher resolution, we can now download this. We have our render in our downloads at 2048 pixels by 2048. Let's take this now into Photoshop. So the next step is to remove the background. The new update for Photoshop, it gives us this option to remove the background right away. And it does a pretty dang good job. Sometimes it's not going to do a perfect job. Maybe, for example, it missed a part. I want to show you the pen tool, which is you'll find with the letter P. And then I'm going to just make a path with the pen tool around. I'm just clicking and dragging to make curved path lines. If you just click a single time, then you're going to just create a geometric anchor point that's more rooted with less curvature. But I'm just going to do a quicker job just to give you guys the idea. I just closed the path loop and I'm going to click Control, Make Selection at a 0 feather radius. I'm going to click OK. With my layer mask over here, I'm going to be using my brush tool to paint over where the selection is. So if we take a look over here at our layer mask, I'm going to hold Option so you can see what's actually happening. Whatever is in white is what's showing, and whatever is in black is hidden. So I'm going to hold Option and click the layer mask again to reveal the image that we're working with. So another trick to remember this is black conceals, white reveals. Black conceals, white reveals at the very bottom left over here. That's what this is referring to, the foreground and background swatches over here. So you can switch the swatches by clicking these arrows, or you can click X on your keyboard for the shortcut. So if we know black conceals and white reveals, we want to paint black on the inside over here, which is why my swatch's foreground color is black. With the brush tool, I'm just painting over that, making sure that this is all happening on my layer mask. That's all done. Command D to deselect, and we have our first letter. To save it, let's go up, File, Export as Quick PNG. So that way we have everything organized. A Firefly download, a PNG in the PNG exports folder, in the Firefly downloads folder. So you're going to repeat this process all the way through until you've done every single letter, number, and symbol. For the rest of this video, there's just going to be some Photoshop tricks that will help you better customize your letters in case you're not happy with some of them or you want to tidy some up. Otherwise, you're ready for the next video if you've got all these characters as PNG exports.
To start off, I want to try to get rid of all of this background lines over here and just try to make the contrast better from the paper to the actual characters and numbers themselves. With this single layer clicked, because you should only have one layer by now, Command L will bring up your levels. And we are applying this levels adjustment layer directly to our layer that we have over here, meaning this is going to be a permanent change to the image. So you'll see the right side is your whites, the black side is your left, but another way we can use the levels over here is by using these eyedropper tools. So the very left one, or the one with the black at the tip, represents your black points, and then the opposite side is your white points, the one with the white tip in the eyedropper tool. So let's say, for example, I want to choose something on my image that represents true white. Choosing the paper wouldn't be good enough, but if we choose this pencil marking that is underneath the Sharpie, we can see that that goes away because then the levels adjustment layer decides that pencil is true white. By holding spacebar, I activate the hand tool or the move tool and it can move around. It looks pretty good for the most part, that most of that pencil marking is gone. Now if we click the other eyedrop tool, these are our true blacks. So we want that Sharpie ink to be our true black. So I'm just going to use that eyedropper tool and hover over the ink and click it. So now that becomes my true blacks. And I'm going to click OK to make that change permanent. Command 0 to zoom out. If you need to crop something, you can actually use the C for the crop tool, or find that over here. And you can pull that in as you need. But now I see a few instances in my characters where things look like they could be cleaned up a little bit better. And that's what we're going to fix next in Photoshop. And I'm going to show you a few ways how to clean and fix up your letters so they look just a little bit smoother. So first off, let's click Z for the zoom tool, and I'm just going to zoom into my first letter over here. Let's say over here we see our letter A, and we want to kind of get rid of that nub over there. So there's a few things that we can do. And first, I want to show you the lasso tool over here. There's the lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool, and magnetic lasso tool. By clicking on top of if you just see the lasso tool, you can just hover over it and click and hold with your mouse, and then you're going to get these other options here. The polygonal lasso tool is what we're going to use first, and that's essentially just doing straight lines. So I am going to use the polygonal lasso tool, click where I want to start, drag it down, click over here for the next point, click over here, and if I hold Command on my keyboard, that's going to make me eligible to close the loop of the lasso. So I've made a selection. Now option 1, what you could do to clean up your letters is simply erase something that you don't like. E for the eraser tool. So with the eraser tool, I'm going to just erase over here, and that is erasing only what's inside of my selection. Command Z, I can redo it or undo it if I make a mistake. Again, E for the eraser tool. I can click the brush at the top left, and I can actually change the hardness if I want that at 100%. I can click that, and you'll see it makes much more of a straight line than if I have the hardness at 0%. Then you see that it feathers, or it gradually goes away. One other thing, when using any brushes or eraser tools, you can use the brackets on your keyboard to make your brush size bigger or smaller. That is to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. So with the eraser tool, I'm just going to erase away that nub over there. And then once I'm finished with a selection like this, I could just click Command D on my keyboard to deselect, and my selection goes away. If I keep doing this, you're probably going to notice that this part over here is showing this transparent checkers in the back. Don't worry about that. What we can do, just for the sake of visual pleasure in our mind, we can add a new layer at the bottom right next to the trash can, drag that new layer to the bottom. I'm going to rename that white background, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I can click the contents as white at 100% with normal blending. And then my background is white. So anything that I erase is not really going to show because there's a white background underneath, but the job is still getting done. Okay? So we can go over here. I'm going to do this quickly, just as some examples. I'm not going to be perfection on this. I'm going to go over here, change my hardness to 100, and I'm just going to erase, oops, wrong layer. Make sure you click the correct layer that you want to work on. Click erase over there. Oops, looks like I did erase away some of the white background, which gives me a chance to show you the next tool. So I'm going to hide my characters for right now. And what I see over here is an erased white smudge. So click B for the brush tool, which is the next thing I want to introduce you to. You could also find it on the left over here on your toolbar. The brush tool looks like this. And if your boxes on the bottom left are not looking like that, like black and white, you can click the letter D. That stands for default black and white brush. And you can click these arrows to flip-flop which one that you're using. The very front box is the one that is going to be the color that you're using with the brush. So with white in front, I'm going to make my brush bigger, and I'm going to brush over that area to paint it back in. Let's take a look over here. With the brush tool, now that we've mentioned the brush tool, it's a nice time to show how a brush tool could help us fix the letter E over here. Make sure you click the correct layer that you want to use. With B for the brush tool, with black as your foreground. Let's see, whoops, went away. I want to make sure that my brush hardness is 100% in this circumstance. I'm going to lower my brush size, and I can actually add black to it as well. So I can go in, and I can also use my brush tool to add black, or I can switch the foreground to white, and I can paint white over black pixels, as opposed to using the eraser tool. And as a reminder, we can use the lasso tool if we want to make a very straight line with the polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to close that off by holding Command and then E for the eraser tool, and I can erase a perfectly straight line. Command D to deselect, and what I see over here is a straight line G, if that's something that you want. Oh, what I wanted to show you also is the pen tool, in case there's something that's really tricky to get. Maybe you could get this with your polygonal lasso tool, but if you're someone who wants to be really precise with getting away all those pixels, this is what you do with the pen tool to make a very, very, very accurate selection. P for the pen tool, you can also find it here. I'm going to click once where I start. If I click and hold, then these anchor bars are going to appear, or these little handlebars are going to appear, and those handlebars let me curve my pen tool. So I want to try to curve it with the letter. I'm going to drag it a little closer to the anchor point. I'm going to click again. If I click it without clicking and dragging, it makes a straight line. For example here, straight lines. Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. Clicking and holding, again, makes more of a curve. I'm going to curve it this way, and then click for a harsh right angle over there. Now click and hold. Click and hold, click and hold. And here it doesn't really matter, but I need to reconnect my path. So I've made a path with my pen tool. If I need to adjust anything, I can go to a specific anchor point. By hovering over it, it gives me the opportunity to erase that anchor point. So by holding Command, I can move the handlebars so that it curves a little bit different. And by holding Command again, I can also move those anchor points so that fits in just a little bit better, or to where I want it to do, or to how I want it. Once your path is complete and you're ready to turn that path into a selection, Control click or right click and click Make Selection. With the 0 feather radius, I'm going to click OK. And I've made a customized selection. E for the eraser tool will let me erase whatever's inside my selection only. Command D deselects my selection. And the selection are these, what we call the marching ants. Command D. And they're gone. Command minus lets me zoom out. With those tools and techniques in mind, I want you to go through your entire alphabet and your numbers before I introduce you to the next step. What I want to show you next is if something is not straight, like the G and the Q, is something that we want to clean up. So let's take the lasso tool again. You can either use the polygonal lasso tool by just clicking a lot around it, closing it, or you can also use just the normal lasso tool. I'm going to do Command D to deselect that. And this is more of an organic free form that goes around it. Oops, messed up. Oop, okay, Command D to deselect if I mess up. I'm going to start over. Make a good, nice circle around G. Let go, and I've made my selection. Make sure again you're on the correct layer and use Command T. This is the transform tool. With Command T selected, or with Command T, I can transform whatever is selected. And in this case, specifically the G is outlined. So by going over to the corner over here, I can rotate this and make sure that that's straight. If I want to be sure, I can also hold Command quotation marks, and that brings up my grid so you can see that there's all these different lines which I can use to my advantage to make sure that everything's straight. Let's say in this case it looks pretty good. I guess this could be a little straighter, so I'm straightening this with the vertical line over there. Okay, looks good. I will click return and Command D to deselect. That's it. One last tip with the transform tool is you can actually scale it bigger, smaller by just clicking and dragging. If you want to make it thinner or thicker, you can also hold Command and drag one of those squares in. Okay, now it's skinny, now it's wide. There's different things that you can do to it as well. Go ahead and go through all of your characters, your numbers, your symbols, in case you need to reposition anything. Okay, if by this point you're having some trouble with a specific shape, if you're trying to clean it up and it's not working out too well, or you're not really entirely happy with how you design something, there is another approach to changing it and fixing it. And I want to show you with these symbols over here. Essentially, what I'm gonna suggest if you're really struggling is you can recycle shapes that you've already designed. For basic example, if I'm really unhappy with how, let's say, these equal signs look really blotchy, and this is one that seems to be more perfect, I can use the lasso tool. Let's make a lasso over it. I'm going to click Command J on my keyboard to duplicate it. Now if I turn the rest of this off, the bottom layer is off, I'm going to find that only this single line exists. I can click Command, well, better show you like that. I can click Command J again to duplicate this one. And I'm going to pull this down, and together that already makes an equal sign. Just make sure that you label each layer, because if you do this a lot, it's going to get really, really messy. But that, in essence, could be your new equal sign. I'm moving everything with this move tool over here at the very top left. The shortcut for that's V. Click one layer. Just want to show you an example. You can do Command T on your keyboard. Rotate this. We can scale this down. Hold Command, make it fatter. Put that next to there. Click Enter or Return on your keyboard when you're happy with what you got. Command J to duplicate it. And we have them next to each other. Let's use the lasso tool. Let's say I want to erase only this area over here. E for the eraser tool. And I've created brand new quotation marks. Let me show you one more example with 9. If I use the lasso tool to make a selection around 9, I can click Command J on my keyboard, and it's just going to get me 9 over here as a duplicate. Let's zoom out a little bit and use Command T on our keyboard to bring up the transform tool activated only on the 9 layer. If I rotate it this way, it becomes a B. If I hold Command and I can flip it so it becomes a D, and rotate it again so it becomes the letter P. And then by clicking Enter or Return, that confirms my selection. Let's use these two as an example that any single letter, character, or number could be created using recycled shapes that you've already built. The E can become an F, the C can become an O, the O can become a Q, and so forth. If we've now reached the point where we're totally happy with what we've done to fix up and clean up our characters and letters in Photoshop, the last step before saving is click the very top layer and click this set of keys. Command, Shift, Option, and E. Command, Shift, Option, E makes what's called a clone stamp visible layer, which is essentially a screenshot of everything that you've done already in Photoshop, and it just makes a single copy of all of that. So we are finishing with this last layer on the very top, our clone stamp visible layer. So the last thing we want to do before we end the video and move on to part 2 is we want to save it. So click File, Save As. We can either save it on our computer or in cloud. If you save it to Creative Cloud, that means you can work on this at home. If you save it on your computer, then that means that you're only that you're bound to working on this project on the iMac that you're currently using right now. So go ahead and make your choice, and I'm going to do, let's say, type project in whatever. .psd means Photoshop, so just type project is fine. And then the format, make sure it's in Photoshop. That way we save our Photoshop file. Click OK. So that's it, guys, for part 1 of how to design your own font. We went from a font that was handwritten and put that into Photoshop and cleaned it up. The next part is going to be taking the characters themselves into Adobe Illustrator and vectorizing our characters.